name is Ray Kaczynski, and I'm not sure, but right now, health care companies have to spend 55% of all money brought in on paying bills and 45% on operation of the company. Isn't that going to change to 85-15?
Correct.
And if so, the companies will be out of business in a very short time. It will be undermilled.
I think that's the intent. Good question.
A stronger lean towards more conservative values. I know in Florida there's a rather split between, a candidate Tea Party people who more support, and then a candidate that the RNC is still support. We know it's a candidate that Tea Party people want to have a system. I know that there's Tea Party people refer to as politics as usual. What is your feeling? Is there, how much are the Tea Party people enough to influence so that Republicans will in fact take to heart more conservative values, or is it mainly that we get in power, we'll soon make progress?
Well, that's a really great question. You tell me. I don't see the Tea Party movement or the 9/12 movement as a coordinated, top-driven, even within its own structure, conservative movement within the Republican Party. And I'm not here to tell you that it should be. That's for all of you to decide. Now, selfishly, I would hope so, but it's for you to decide. I do think, my opinion, is that we live in a center-right country. And that's why when Barack Obama campaigned, he campaigned as more of a centrist candidate when many of us knew that he was the most liberal progressive in the Senate. But yet, he got a majority of Americans to vote for him, and some Republicans to vote for him, and a lot of independent voters in the middle who've now actually been surprised and have now expressed concern. And so, moving forward, my belief is, just from feeling it around Central Ohio, in a district that you won, that there are a lot of people who have buyer's remorse. And at the end of the day, the choice is going to be between a Republican candidate and a Democrat candidate in many of these elections across the country. And I think that my opinion again, if Republicans become the majority party again, in the House at least, John Boehner is our leader, someone who's never taken an earmark, who wants to eliminate earmarks, reform earmarks, provide leadership for the first time to convince at least most, if not all, of our Republicans not to do earmarks for a year. I haven't requested one since 2006, 2007, and I'm taking some heat over from my Democrat opponent and from both Republicans and Democrats. But fundamentally, it is a corrupting system, even though it represents a small piece of a much bigger pie, but that small piece is still pretty big. And if we can't reform within our earmark system, how are we going to reform the big stuff, like Medicare and Social Security and all these other entitlement programs that are driving us in debt? Let me just give you an example with respect to this issue. Today, when I go back next week, for every dollar that we spend, we're going to borrow a record 46 cents, half of which comes from overseas borrowers. And half of the overseas borrowers are coming from our new bank in China. I say that facetiously. Now, that is not only an economic issue, that's a national security issue that everybody in this room should be concerned about. And so, to answer your question more fully, I believe that we, as Republicans, most of us, if we could communicate to the American people, those that are in the center, why some of these issues are important to them from a conservative standpoint. I believe that we can be the conservative party for a generation. We don't have somebody like Ronald Reagan right now, who was a great communicator, my favorite president. And he had the ability to have a good message, maybe with wit and humor, and just a great ability to communicate, but yet a conservative message. And he was able to convince Democrats, Reagan Democrats, moderate voters to be part of the conservative movement. And that's what we need at the national level, I think. But individually, some of us can do that throughout the country. But again, it's a center-right country, not a right-right country. But I think we can get that center to be more conservative because genuinely people are more conservative. I'll give you an example. We had a hearing in the Ways and Means Committee about the president's budget, which is going to spend about $1 trillion more a year than it takes in, after raising a lot of taxes, by the way. So I said to the Secretary of Treasury, Tim Geithner, I said, you say that that the president is going to balance, or is going to budget like a family budgets around the kitchen table. To which I said to him, you just offended my father if my father saw these numbers. Because my father, with a 6th grade education, never spent more than he took in. No, that was pretty much common sense to him. Don't spend more than you're taking in. And if you make less, you spend less. Didn't get a credit card until he was 60 years old, because my sisters and I convinced him that he could make money off the credit card company by getting cash back. My dad thinks he's ripping off the credit card companies. Not many people think that. Government doesn't operate that way. The president, think about this. Last year, we took in revenue $2.1 trillion. So we took in. We spent $3.5 trillion. And that means we have a deficit, a record deficit of $1.4 trillion. President's own numbers, he raises taxes. He gets more revenue, okay? In 5 years, with all this new revenue that he has coming in, he is going to get $3.6 trillion in new revenue. This is what I say to Geithner. So my dad would say, okay, you didn't cut spending, but you raised taxes, but now you're going to pay for what you spend, what you're spending, right? No. You take that 3.5 that you're making, that you were spending this year, you raise all those taxes, and you spend $4.7 trillion. Go 5 years out some more, you raise some more taxes, you get to $4.7 trillion. What do? You spend another $1 trillion. And you're spending $5.7 trillion. Now I know there's a lot of different numbers, but the point is, Washington doesn't have a spending or a revenue problem. It has a spending problem. And I think most centrist voters, moderate voters, conservative Democrats would say, that's not a Republican or Democrat issue. That's a common sense issue. We need to stop spending so much money.